I was 24 the morning everything in my life shifted. It happened quietly, without warning, in my grandmother's stone house that sat high above the silver water outside Seattle. The house had always felt like a guardian, with its gray shingles, white trim, and tall windows shaped by years of wind from the bay. When the early light slipped in through the glass, it touched the floors that smelled like lemon oil and old books. I knew every creak in those wooden planks, every cool patch of tile in the hallway, every place where sunlight rested in the afternoon. Half my childhood had been lived in that house, mostly on the worn steps outside where I waited for my grandmother's truck after school. That house had raised me more than either of my parents ever had. My grandmother, Eleanor Carter, was a builder through and through. Not a builder of small dreams, but of concrete and steel, of projects that people said were impossible until she proved them wrong. She started with one broken house in a rough street and transformed it into something sturdy and bright, a place people wanted to live. Then she bought another and another. By the time I was old enough to understand the weight of money and the meaning of blueprints, she owned apartment buildings across America, a handful of hotels, and even a few old warehouses in Europe that she had turned into modern lofts. She loved the sound of cranes, the rumble of trucks, and the sight of scaffolding more than any party or celebration. My mother never understood that. She called my grandmother stubborn, controlling, old-fashioned, anything she could think of to hide the truth. And the truth was simple. My mother, Linda, was afraid of responsibility. She loved freedom the way some people love fire, enough to burn everything near her. When I was 10, she packed her bags, tossed a few loose bills on the kitchen counter, and left our small rental house in Tacoma with a man who talked big but lived small. She said she needed to live her life, that she was tired of being tied to people who slowed her down. At the time, I still believed her promises. She said she would visit, call, bring gifts, and take me places. None of it happened. My father followed the same path not long after. The next time I saw him, he was signing away custody because he had other plans. In the end, it was my grandmother who drove up in her old blue truck, hugged me tight, and told me I was coming home with her. She signed the papers herself, looked the lawyer straight in the eye, and said she would build something better for me. I grew up watching her on job sites, walking over gravel in steel-toe boots, pointing at unfinished walls, correcting measurements, and checking foundation lines. She made me read floor plans before I could legally drive. At 16, I was sitting in her truck eating fries while she argued with a banker over a $2 million line of credit, as if she were ordering coffee. She always used the same sentence with me, as if she were etching it into stone. Property is not just walls, Maya. It is a promise, and you do not break promises. That morning, she called me into her study. Her study was the heart of the house. Oak shelves, a heavy desk, wide bay window that poured light over every blueprint and photograph. There, sitting on the desk, was a leather folder. It was thick, dark, and somehow looked heavier than it really was, like it carried more than paper inside. "Sit," she told me. Her white hair was pulled back, and her sharp blue eyes looked softer than usual, almost tired. That alone made my nerves rise. I sat slowly. My palms were sweating, though I tried to hide it. She pushed the leather folder toward me. "This is the Carter Trust," she said. "I signed the last documents yesterday. Every apartment building in my name, the hotel in Chicago, the old warehouse we turned into lofts in Boston, the townhouse block in London, the beach motel in California. All of it is here." I stared at her, thinking I had misheard. "For the company?" I asked. She shook her head. "For you." My breath caught in my throat. "Grandma, that is hundreds of millions of dollars." She gave me a small smile. $310 million last we checked. You always liked exact numbers. I opened the folder with shaking hands. The first page carried my name. The next dozen pages carried it too. Trust documents, property deeds, valuation charts, and company structures. Conditions were written out in clear language. I could not sell certain properties for 10 years. I had to maintain the staff. I had to attend annual reviews with lawyers. But none of those things mattered in that moment. I was the heir. "I thought you would keep everything in your name," I whispered. "At least until you are gone." I built the bones, she said. You will keep them alive. I trust you more than anyone. You always had the heart for this. And you have the eyes for it too. Her words filled a hollow place inside me, a place left behind by two parents who had never chosen me the way she had. I had just turned the second page when I heard it. Tires on gravel. Not the clunky sound of her truck.
No.
This was smooth, expensive, and completely out of place on the hill. My grandmother's jaw tightened slightly. Right on time, she murmured. She did not look shocked. Only I did not know who had just arrived. The doorbell rang with that sharp, metallic tone that never belonged in my grandmother's house. It always sounded like it had been installed by someone who didn't understand the meaning of quiet spaces. Sound traveled too easily here. You could hear the stove clicking from the front hallway, hear the waves hitting the rocks below, hear Grandma's boots on the back steps long before she appeared. Now, the sound of heels on tile and a deep male voice seeped through the walls, snapping the air into something tight. "Stay here," Grandma said. Her tone was so calm it made my stomach twist. She walked out and closed the study door behind her with a soft click that somehow felt louder than the bell. I heard her greet them. Just one word. Linda. My mother's name. A chill ran straight through me. 5 years since I had last seen her. 5 years since she'd left me with a handful of excuses and 100 broken promises. Yet she walked into the house like she had never left. Through the thick wood of the study door, I could hear the rhythm of her heels, sharp, impatient, practiced. The door opened, and she stepped inside. She looked almost the same as the younger version of herself I remembered, only thinner, sharper, polished in a way that didn't feel real. Her blonde hair was styled into soft curls that must have taken hours. The blue dress she wore hugged her like she had chosen it for a camera, not a family visit. Her necklace glittered in a way that didn't match the stories she told online about rebuilding her life. "Maya," she said, stretching my name like it was an invitation instead of a reminder. "Look at you." I stood up slowly, the leather folder still under my hand. My grandmother took her place beside me, quiet but unmovable. Behind my mother walked a man, tall, smooth, dressed in a fitted suit that looked tailored for someone who spent more time posing than working. Marcus. I remembered his name from a picture she had posted, the one where she tilted her head toward him like she was showing off a trophy. He walked in like he belonged in the room. His smile was wide and practiced, the kind that had probably worked on people with weaker boundaries. "What are you doing here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. My palms were sweating again, but I didn't step back. "We came as soon as we heard," my mother said.
About the trust.
"About the properties. We were worried you might feel overwhelmed." Overwhelmed. As if she had ever cared whether I sank or swam. Marcus stepped a little closer, his eyes drifting to the folder between my hands. "This is a lot for someone your age," he said. "Hundreds of millions if the rumors are right. Complex companies, legal documents, tax structures. It makes sense to have family help. Real help." "Family," Grandma repeated, her voice carrying a quiet edge sharp enough to cut glass. My mother plastered on a smile that didn't reach her eyes.
"We've been talking," she said.
"And we think the smartest thing, the responsible thing, is to put everything under one clear management structure. You sign temporary control to me and Marcus, and we run the business in your name. You won't have to worry about a thing. In return, you get a nice monthly allowance. Maybe $30,000. Enough to live very comfortably." The room dipped for a moment. "An allowance?" I repeated. "It's generous," Marcus said, as if I should thank him. "Considering your age and limited experience with this scale. Think of it as protection. There are sharks out there, people who would try to take advantage of you. We know how to deal with them." I looked at my grandmother. Her expression didn't change, but her hand brushed my elbow, grounding me. She was telling me to stay calm, stay still, stay smart. "You didn't mention sharks when you signed those secret loans," Grandma said softly. My mother froze, the fake smile slipping from her face. "What are you talking about?" "The second mortgage on your condo," Grandma said. "The personal loan Marcus took 3 months ago. The credit cards are in both your names. All that debt you've been hiding behind rented suits and cheap champagne." Marcus stiffened. You can't know that. Grandma raised a brow. I built half the city. I know every banker in it. Silence swept through the room, thick and cold. Even the gulls outside seemed to fall quiet. You cannot give her all this, my mother snapped suddenly, pointing at me like I was a child touching something fragile. She has no idea how to manage a legacy like this. We are her parents. We have a right to step in. You gave up that right when you walked away, Grandma said. Her voice didn't rise, didn't shake, but steel laced every word. And, today, you're not here for her. You're here for the money. We are here for the family, Marcus said, leaning forward like the word itself might convince us. Grandma looked at the folder under my hand, then back at them. Funny, she said quietly, because today is about family. Just not in the way you think. My mother's lips pinched together. I could see the shift in her face. The moment she realized she wasn't going to charm her way through this. She leaned back, crossing her arms like a shield. Maya, she said, trying a softer tone now. Your grandmother is setting you up to fail. She always controlled everything. Let us help you. You need us. I swallowed hard. For years, I had wanted those words to be true. But in that moment, they felt empty, like a song that once meant something but no longer fit the melody of my life. I don't, I said quietly. The look on her face cracked, just for a second. Grandma rose from her chair with the kind of strength age couldn't take from her. She nodded toward the hallway. We're not discussing this here, she said. We'll move to the living room. There's more than talk waiting there. My mother stiffened. Marcus's eyes narrowed. And for the first time, I sensed what Grandma had prepared long before they arrived. The real confrontation hadn't even started yet. The living room had always felt like the heart of my grandmother's house. A wide stone fireplace anchored the far wall, framed by shelves packed with old photo albums, project binders, and pieces of her life's work. The leather sofas were broken in from years of conversations, victories, and arguments. Even the rug, thick, deep red, and slightly faded, held a story. Grandma bought it when her first apartment building finally paid for itself. She used to say that this room carried every good decision she ever made. Now it carried the worst ones my mother had made, too. Grandma walked ahead of us, slow but steady. My mother's heels struck the wood floor in angry, impatient taps, each one sharper than the last. Marcus followed behind her, his gaze moving across the house, as if he were adding up its value in his head. I recognized that look well. It belonged to men who believed everything, land, homes, people, could be priced and purchased. On the coffee table lay another folder, thinner than the trust binder, but somehow heavier in the air around it. Two men in suits stood by the tall window overlooking the bay. I recognized one instantly. Mr. Harris, my grandmother's lawyer for as long as I had known her. The second was a partner from a firm in New York, a man who handled complex trust structures and international projects across America and Europe. I had met him only once, but his presence alone told me that Grandma hadn't been caught off guard by today. She had prepared for this. Sit, Grandma said with quiet authority. I took my place on the sofa beside her. My mother and Marcus settled across from us. She crossed her legs with a sharp flip, her expression shifting between annoyance and calculation. Marcus rested his elbows on his knees like he expected to negotiate a business merger. Mr. Harris cleared his throat. As of yesterday, the Carter Trust is fully executed. The controlling beneficiary is Ms. Maya Carter. He nodded toward me. The settler and co-trustee is Ms. Eleanor Carter. No other family member has legal standing within the structure. My mother waved a hand as if brushing away dust. We're not here to argue about paperwork. We're talking about what is right. I am her mother. I deserve a say. The papers are what is right, Grandma replied. Her voice did not rise. It did not need to. And since you came all this way, we can address everything else you have been avoiding. She nodded to the second lawyer, who opened his folder and spread documents across the coffee table. Bank statements, loan agreements, debt schedules, the kind of numbers that strip away pretense. As requested, he said, We traced all outstanding obligations under the names of Ms. Linda Carson and Mr. Marcus Holt. My mother flinched at the sound of her full legal name spoken aloud. It punctured whatever mask she had entered with. There are personal loans from 3 banks, the lawyer continued, credit lines with 4 major card companies, and 2 private notes. The combined principal is $610,000. With accumulated interest and fees, the total liability is $843,512. The number dropped into the room like a stone sinking to the bottom of a pond. Even the air felt heavier. My mother forced a short laugh. So what? Everyone has debt. That's how money works. You build, you borrow. Eleanor, you, of all people, should understand that. Grandma shook her head. I borrowed to build. You borrowed to pretend. Marcus leaned forward slightly, focusing on me now. You can help, Maya. 1 transfer. $1 million. That's nothing compared to the trust. You pay everything off, we wipe the slate clean, and we move forward as a family. Everyone wins. For a heartbeat, I felt the old ache deep inside, the ache of the little girl who once stood on a porch holding a suitcase while her mother drove away. That girl would have traded everything for a family that stayed. She would have agreed. She would have hoped. But I wasn't that girl anymore. Before I could answer, Grandma lifted her hand. You already tried to take what you wanted, she said. Both of you signed contracts for something you did not own. She nodded to Mr. Harris again. He placed another document on the table. It was a draft development agreement. My grandmother's company name appeared on the first page, but written in the wrong place, like someone pretending to know how corporate structures worked. At the bottom were my mother's initials and Marcus's signature. My mother seized it immediately. Where did you get this? The man you try to sell to thinks he is clever, Grandma said. He isn't. But he isn't stupid either. He called me to confirm whether you had the authority to negotiate development rights to my Chicago hotel. She leaned back. Rights that now belong to the trust. A hollow, nauseating feeling ran through me. I had expected greed. I had expected manipulation. I had not expected fraud. My mother's eyes snapped to mine, desperate and furious all at once. You don't understand, Maya. We needed a fresh start. You grew up with everything. This house. This view. Private school. A truckload of advantages I never had. I had to claw my way through every door. You left, I said quietly. You chose that. I didn't. For a long time no one spoke. The heater hummed gently in the background. A gull cried somewhere outside. The silence pressed against the walls. Then Grandma leaned forward, elbows on her knees, her voice steady. This is your lesson, Maya, she said. You can love people and still draw a line they are not allowed to cross. You can care for them and still refuse to pay for their lies. She nodded once more to the lawyers. Mr. Harris stood tall, his tone firm. As of this morning, due to attempted fraud involving Carter assets, both of you are barred from entering any property owned by the Carter Trust, including this house. You will receive formal notice of a restraining order. Any further attempt to negotiate or sign agreements under the Carter property will be treated as criminal fraud. My mother shot up from the sofa. You can't do this to me. Grandma didn't move. I can. And I have. Marcus rose more slowly, jaw tight with anger. You'll regret this. Both of you. Grandma let out a slow, tired smile, the kind I had seen her use on men twice his size. I've been threatened by people with far more power than you, Marcus. None of them scared me. You won't be the first. Right on cue, the 2 quiet security men stepped into the room. Professional. Polite. Immovable. My mother jerked her arm away at first, but she walked. Marcus followed, stiff and furious. The front door closed behind them. The echo rolled through the house like a deep exhale. For the first time in years, the sound felt like peace. After my mother and Marcus were escorted out, the house felt different, lighter, but not in a joyful way. More like a storm had finally passed, leaving the air washed clean and honest. For so long, their shadows had lived inside these walls, even when they were miles away. I didn't realize how much space their absence created until the front door closed behind them and silence settled like a soft blanket over everything. The lawyers gathered their papers with the calm efficiency of men who had seen 100 families fall apart and rebuild themselves in the same afternoon. Mr. Harris shook my hand before he left. His palm was warm, steady, grounding. "You're in control now, Miss Carter," he told me. "We'll review every detail in the next few weeks. No rush.
Take this one step at a time.
You'll do fine." The New York lawyer offered a polite nod. He explained the trust structure again, how the assets were fortified under layers of protection, how the entities stretched between America and parts of Europe, how everything was designed to withstand exactly the kind of attempt my mother had made today. He spoke in clean, simple words, as if translating a foreign language for me.
He didn't talk down to me.
He talked to me like someone who belonged in the room. When they left, the sun had dipped below the treeline, brushing the clouds in pink and gold. I stood by the study window, the leather folder open on the desk. The papers didn't feel overwhelming anymore. They didn't feel like a surprise or a burden. They felt like something that had been waiting for me all along. Grandma stepped beside me, her soft sweater brushing my arm. "I know it feels heavy right now," she said gently. "Responsibility always weighs on the shoulders before it settles in the bones." "I don't know if I'm ready," I admitted. The truth came out in a whisper I barely recognized. She gave a low, warm laugh. "You were ready the day you told that old foreman his measurements were wrong. You were 16 and still wearing braces, and he was furious until he realized you saved us $40,000 and a very ugly lawsuit." She touched my arm. "I knew then I could trust you someday." And someday turned into today. I smiled, remembering how red the foreman's face had gone when he realized I had caught something he had missed. He didn't speak to me for a week, then started calling me Hawkeyes every time he passed by. "What happens now?" I asked quietly. "To them?" Grandma sighed, the sound full of years of disappointment rather than anger. "They'll scream. They'll spin stories. They'll tell anyone who listens that you betrayed them, or that I poisoned you against them. They'll talk about the cold builder on the hill and the ungrateful heir. But let them talk."
She turned to me.
"Noise can't move walls." I let that settle inside me. Maybe I had spent too many years believing the opposite, that noise could shake foundations, destroy families, tear people apart. But I was learning that noise only has power if you open the door to let it inside. I looked around the study. The shelves were heavy with decades of plans, legal binders, old photographs, and fragments of my grandmother's long life. On one shelf sat a framed picture of her standing proudly in front of her first finished building, wearing a hard hat and a grin that made her look 20 years younger. Beside it was a snapshot of me at 8 years old, holding a hard hat too big for my head while Grandma crouched beside me. "This house used to feel loud," I said softly. "Even when no one was here. It felt like their voices stayed in the corners, like their footsteps were waiting in the hall. Like I had to be quiet just so I wouldn't disturb the ghosts." "And now?" she asked. Now, for the first time, I felt like I could breathe. "Now it's quiet," I said. "But not empty." She nodded. "That's the difference. Silence can be a wound, or it can be a choice. Today, we chose it." The weeks that followed were a blur of work and travel. I met accountants in Chicago and walked the hotel halls at midnight, running my hands along the polished stone walls my grandmother had chosen years ago. I visited the townhouse block in London and stood in the lobby listening to the murmur of footsteps and life filtering through the building. I flew to California to inspect the old beach motel we were renovating. And I visited our very first apartment building, the one that started everything. The paint was peeling again, but the bones were still strong. I looked at those old beams and thought about how many lives had passed through those rooms. How many stories were held in those walls. I didn't sell anything. Grandma had taught me better. Instead, I refinanced loans, repaired roofs, and raised wages for the staff who had stayed loyal for years. I met with every site manager, listened to every concern, and read every report. I realized quickly that the trust wasn't a fortune. It was a living, breathing thing. A network of people, buildings, responsibilities, promises. and it was mine. My mother called a few times, using block numbers. I let every call ring into silence. One night, she left a message, her voice tight and strained. She said I would regret choosing Grandma over her. For a moment, old memories flickered. The ache of wanting a mother who stayed, of wanting a family that didn't slip through my fingers. But I looked around my small office, at the notes in my own handwriting, at the plans I was shaping, at the life I was actively building rather than waiting for. I wasn't choosing Grandma over my mother. I was choosing myself. Months later, I stood on the front porch with a mug of coffee, the evening air cool against my skin. The bay was calm, lit by the gentle sparkle of boat lights drifting across the water. Inside, the house hummed with quiet, the old heater clicking, a soft radio playing in the kitchen, the kind of silence that didn't feel hollow. Grandma stepped beside me, pulling her sweater tight. "Long day." "A good one," I said. "Do you ever miss the noise?" I asked. She thought for a moment. "Sometimes. Noise is familiar. It tricks the lonely into feeling surrounded. But real strength comes from standing in the quiet and knowing you are enough." I looked at the city lights beyond the water, at the buildings she had raised, and the buildings I would raise after her. The legacy didn't end with her. It didn't start with me. It flowed through both of us. "I kept the legacy," I said softly. "You did," she whispered. "And you'll carry it long after I'm gone." Her words hurt, but they also settled in my bones like truth. She wouldn't be here forever, but her lessons were built into every wall, every roof, every piece of this life. The estranged parent and the smooth-talking partner were gone. Their shadows no longer lived in the halls. The noise that once ruled this house had fallen away. In its place, something stronger had grown, a steady heartbeat under stone and wood, a promise built from trust, grit, and love. My name was on the deeds now. But the legacy was more than signatures and paper. It was the choice to protect what was built with care. It was the strength to stand firm when others tried to take it. It was knowing that the past could knock on the door, but I didn't have to let it in.